I was put in the middle. Oh. Okay. Yes. Hey, I've told everybody, welcome back to everybody who's been away and is back. So somebody pointed out to me, Pesach is over, so we won't discuss Hilchot Pesach anymore. Although it's strange to think that in America it's still Yom Tov, but anyway, here it's not. So Hilchot Sfirat HaOmer is the logical next thing to talk about. We move from Pesach towards Shavuot. We're in the 7-week process of counting the Omer. What is the Omer? What are we counting? What are we doing? So read you from the Pnei Halacha. He says, Mitzvah lesaper melel k'tzir HaOmer. Right? From the night of harvesting the Omer, which is the second night of Pesach, as we all know, that is we start counting, we count 49 days, which are 7 weeks. Although we all know when we start counting from the second night of Pesach, but this was a very big point of contention between the Pushim and the Tzdukim. The Torah says, Mimacharat Shabbat. What does it mean, Mimacharat Shabbat? When do you start counting? So we understand, and the Gemara discusses, that Macharat Shabbat means the day after the Shabbat, meaning Shabbat referring to Yom Tov of Pesach. Now, we've spoken before, why is it that the Tzdukim said no? They said Macharat Shabbat means Shabbat is in Saturday, and you start counting on Sunday, whenever that will fall out. But why does it say? It would have been much more logical, we think, if the Torah had said Mimacharat Pesach. But when you realize that actually no, Pesach in the Torah does not mean what Pesach means today. Remember, in the Torah there are 2 separate festivals. There is Pesach and there is Chag HaMatzot. Now, we forget about it because nowadays we don't have the Korban Pesach, but the Korban Pesach is brought on Yud Daled. That's the day before what we call Pesach. When the Yom Tov begins, that's Chag HaMatzot. So if the Torah had said Mimacharat Pesach, that actually would have been far more confusing. Because does Mimacharat Pesach mean Tet Vav of Nisan, meaning the day after you bring the Korban Pesach? When it says Mimacharat Shabbat, means the day after the Yom Tov, the day which is like Shabbat in the sense that you can't do Melacha. So that's maybe why, it's one explanation why. The Meshech Chochmah has a whole piece where he discusses the similarities between Shabbat and Pesach, and why Pesach is called Shabbat, etc. Okay, in any event, so we count the 7 weeks beginning from the second day of Pesach, right, the second night, I should say. Miyuchad hu Chag HaShavuot, she'eno tarich chodshi kedugmat sha'al chagim. And we get to, at the end of 7 weeks, as we know, we'll get to Shavuot, which is unique amongst all the festivals in that there is no date of Chag HaShavuot. לדוגמה, זמנו של חג הפסח בט"ו ניסן, right? Pesach is always on ט"ו Nisan. Sukkot is always on ט"ו Tishrei. It happens to be that nowadays we do have a date for Sukkot because we have a fixed calendar. But when we didn't have a fixed calendar, and Rosh Chodesh could have been, there are a number of months in between, of Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, right? Could have been on one of 2 days. So Shavuot could have fallen out on Hey, on Vav, or on Zayin of Sivan. It doesn't have to be intrinsically on Vav Sivan, but it has to be intrinsically 49 days after Pesach. And that's what the Torah says. When it says, it gives us the date, it says, Shiva Shavuot Tispol Lecha, ועשית חג שבועות להשם, וספרתם לכם מאחורת השבת, מיום מביאכם את עומר התנופה, 7 שבתות תמימות תהיינה. As we've discussed in the past as well, the 7 שבתות תמימות, right, 7 complete weeks, so the poskim have a lot to say about exactly what it means, 7 שבתות תמימות. So he says, מצווה זו אינה מוטלת רק על בית הדין, אלא מצווה כל אחד מישראל לספור ב-49 ימים. So you might have thought that we need to count 7 weeks. Why? In order to know when Shavuot is. The same way that it's just the Beit Din who has to come along and has to establish when Rosh Chodesh is. So you might have thought the Beit Din has the mitzvah to count the 49 days. But no, it's a mitzvah for each and every Jew to come and count the 49 days. Now he says, interesting. We have a principle where we say Shomea Keoneh. Means if I hear something, it's as if I have said it myself, as if I answer back to it. So for example, we have different mitzvot which we have to read or which we have to hear. So he gives here one example. When we get to Shabbat Zachor, we don't demand that every person goes and reads for themselves from the Sefer Torah. Then it would be really long. You think it's the one thing we have to hear, the different nusachim. Imagine if every person had to go up and read their... No, we don't say that, because the Baal Koreh reads, and that's enough. Shomea Keoneh. So you might have thought, as well, by Sfirat HaOmer, surely it's enough. The Chazan says the bracha, the Chazan announces, today is however many days of the Omer, and I've heard that, Shomea Keoneh, if I've counted myself. So he says, generally speaking, we say that principle. When it comes to Sfirat HaOmer, why do we not say that? Because it says in the Torah, it says, Usfartem lachem. You have to count for yourself. Each person has to count. And therefore, יש אומרים שצריך כל אדם לספור בעצמו בפיו. It brings out the Levush, Chok Yaakov. Some of the Achronim say every individual has to count themselves. ואומנם יש סוברים שדין הספירה כדין שאר המצוות שבדיבור, ויכול אדם לתת ידי חובתו בשמיעת חברו. Okay, there are those who say that one can fulfill the mitzvah through שומע קונה, through hearing somebody else counting the days. אולם לכתחילה, כדי לצאת לפי כל הדעות, צריך כל אחד לספור בעצמו. But we hold that everyone should try and endeavor to count themselves in order to satisfy all the opinions. יסוד המצווה בראשית התהוותנו לעם. This mitzvah of Sfirat HaOmer goes back, traces along to the beginning of the creation of the Jewish people. לאחר שהיו ישראל משועבדים למצרים ומשוקעים במ"ט שערי טומאה. We were slaves in Egypt. We had fallen down to the 49th level of Tumah. This is according to the Zohar. לא היו ראויים לקבל את התורה. At that point, we couldn't just leave Egypt and at the same time receive the Torah. We weren't ready. We weren't able to do that. והיו צריכים לטהר מטומאת מצרים. We had to purify ourselves from all those different layers of Tumah that we acquired in מצרים. ועל כן המתין להם הקדוש ברוך הוא 7 שבועות כדי שיטהרו ויוכלו לקבל את התורה. And therefore, says the Zohar, Kadosh Baruch Hu did not give us the Torah straight away. He took us out of Egypt. He waited 7 weeks until we get to Shavuot, and then we receive the Torah. So in a sense, this is, we are continuing. Pesach said Pesach is over. Pesach's not really over. Right? It continues for 7 weeks until we get to Shavuot. Don't worry, you don't have to eat matzah for 7 weeks. יש בספירה גם ביטוי לציפייה למתן תורה. And therefore the counting that we're doing should be come together with a sense of anticipation, a sense of expectation towards מתן תורה. כך נתפאר במדרש. The Midrash says as follows, כאשר בישר משה לישראל, שאחר צאתם ממצרים יעבדו את השם על הר סיני ויקבלו את התורה. So Moshe Rabbeinu told the Jewish people, you're coming out of Egypt and you're going to serve Hashem, you're going to receive the Torah at Sinai. So they asked him, when is this going to be? Are we there yet? אמר להם, לסוף 50 יום. He said it's going to be 50 days. So it says, מרוב חיבה היו מונים כל יום ואומרים, הרי עבר יום ראשון, הרי עבר יום שני, וכך בכל הימים. And therefore each day they would count, there was a certain חיבה, a certain preciousness, a certain looking forward until we get to the time of מתן תורה. נמצא אם כן שבספרת העומר בא לידי ביטוי הציפייה והכמיהה שלנו לקראת היום הגדול. So it's not just stam that we're counting, saying the days, but we're showing our expectation, we're showing that we're looking forward to receiving the Torah. ותוך כך אנו עוברים תהליך של התעלות. Through that expectation itself, we undergo a process of purification through these memtet 49 levels. וככל שאדם יותר טהור ונקי מטומאה, the more a person is able to purify oneself, כך הוא יוכל לקלוט יותר מאורה של תורה. Then we will be able to receive the Torah to a greater extent. And so it is every year. Every year we go through this process. Again, we're not just commemorating what happened once upon a time, but we're going through the process ourselves, looking forward to receiving the Torah. Okay, so some of the halachot when it comes to Sfirat HaOmer itself. So he says, לפני הספירה מברכים. We all know we say the bracha, ברוך אתה השם אלוקינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו ומצוותיו וציוונו, על ספירת העומר. הברכה והספירה נאמרים לכתחילה בעמידה. Because of what it says in the pasuk, the bracha and the counting should be done standing. Okay, if you're counting when you're in shul with the minions, everybody's standing, you know what to do. But sometimes, if you're counting at home, or if you're on Friday night, let's say we come for early Shabbos, and then we get reminded just before Aleinu L'Shabbat, then when we get home after nightfall, we have to say Kriyat Shema, and we have to say Sfirat HaOmer as well. So you're in the middle of your Shabbos meal, whatever it is, you realize it's dark, you remember, Sfirat HaOmer. So l'katchila, a person should stand up and count. It was a couple of years ago when I was in London, and we had the Rav Shechter came over for a Shabbat to speak, and he was giving a tish in one of the shuls. It was after the meal Friday night, and in the middle he was talking. In the middle he said, Sfirat HaOmer, we haven't counted yet. So he stood up and he said the bracha and counted. So that's l'katchila, a person should do it ba'amidah, standing. V'im yashav yatsa, but if you sat down, it also counts. But you don't have to stand up and count again. הספירה מורכבת משני חלקים. There are 2 different parts to the sphira. We count both days and we count weeks. Right? Because it says in the pasuk, וספרתם לכם ממחרת השבת מיום ויחם אדום הנבט, says 7 Shabbatot, תמימות תהיינה, says you'll count 7 complete weeks, and then it says עד ממחרת השבת שביעית תספרו 50 יום. And then it says you count 50 days. So therefore we count days and we count weeks. For the first 6 days when we were counting, we just had days to count. Once last night we had 7, and we have weeks as well. So we say how many days and how many weeks. Okay, he gives you different examples, but we all know how to count. מספר נוסחים ישנם לספירה וכולם כשרים. There are different formulas. Some people say la omer, some people say ba omer, whatever it is, however you've counted, that is good. רבים נוהגים לומר לשם ייחוד לפני הספירה. And there are just different customs as to what one says before and after. There are places, it's not the custom here, but there are places where the custom is to say l'shem yichud, and to say a whole paragraph before, and to say a whole paragraph after. Again, אין בזה חובה, ועיקר הספירה עצמה והברכה שלפניה. The main point, the main focus is actual counting. I thought once, why is it that of all things, there are 2 different schools of thought, basically, in terms of whether we should be saying l'shem yichud, and those who are more tend towards a more Kabbalistic way of thinking, say that before many, many different mitzvot. Say l'shem yichud, and others don't. Why is it that when it comes to Sfirat HaOmer, as I said, it's not the case in the shul, but in many, many places, and sometimes places where ordinarily would not say all the extra tefillot and all the extra tchinot and all the things, many people have the custom when it comes to Sfirat HaOmer that they'll say. Why is that? So you might say, because it's printed in the Siddur, so you just read. But why does everybody have that thing? So I thought to myself once that maybe it's because, the mitzvah is really just, you have the bracha, and you just say, Hayom, however many days to the Yom. I'm not going to say it now, so that we can still say with the bracha later. But, and that's it. It seems it's very, very quick. It's very, very short. It seems like there's nothing there. If you add a little bit, you say some Tehillim before, you say some Tehillim afterwards, it seems to give it a little bit more thing. And I think that's where the custom developed, why so many people add in all these tefillot. But as we said, it's certainly not ma'akev, it's not chovah, and as long as you've just said the bracha and said the counting, that is enough. What's interesting, many people, even those who don't say all the extra Tehillim, whatever, afterwards, there was a line that's printed in the Siddurim, it says, Arachamanu achzilanu avodat beit hamikdash lemkora b'marav yameinu amen. Why do we say that? Why, all of a sudden, we could say that anywhere. We don't say, when we eat matzah, when we eat korech, at the Seder, then we could say, Arachamanu achzilanu avodat beit hamikdash. Okay, when we eat, whatever it is. Why, specifically when it comes to Sfirat HaOmer, do we suddenly reference Beit HaMikdash? The reason is, we'll see, we don't have time to go into it now, but whether there are those opinions, it's Machloket Rishonim, whether Sfirat HaOmer nowadays is D'oraita or D'Rabbanan. Everybody agrees that when there was a time when we had the Beit HaMikdash, the Sfirat HaOmer then was D'oraita. Nowadays, maybe it's D'oraita, maybe it's not, maybe it's just Rabbanan, maybe it's just a Zeicher. So the mitzvah itself is intrinsically linked to the concept of the Beit HaMikdash, and maybe that's why it was attached to it as well, the Tefillah of Harachamim. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash אומר, הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות ישראל, לפיכך בא להם דור מצוות, שנאמר בן חפץ ציפקו,